If you clicked on this video, there's about a 50% chance you just want to know if this game is as good as Vampire Survivors. And if you belong to the half that doesn't know what Vampire Survivors is, I'm just gonna be brutally honest and tell you to buy that game instead. It fully released a few days ago and is a game with insane amounts of content. Like seriously, this game will surprise you with the amount of secrets it has. Not to mention, it has much more polished and way more satisfying gameplay. But we'll get to why in a second. Before we do, I want to mention that Spellbook Demonslayers is in early access, so a lot of what I'm about to say is subject to change. But I do believe there are some decisions that make the game worse rather than better when comparing it to the game that inspired it. So I wanted to point those out and let you guys decide for yourselves. Now without further ado, here are the categories I'll be rating this game on: gameplay, content, meta progression, polish and bugs, and art style and soundtrack. Let's start with the gameplay. It's a fairly simple gameplay loop that consists of running around and killing demons, collecting XP, getting items to get even stronger, and then killing demons again. And to be honest, that's mostly it. The game sometimes throws elites at you, which are stronger, bigger enemies that drop treasure chests, and occasionally you'll find the shrine, which in fairness is a unique mechanic that I do like. If you limit yourself to a certain area near the shrine and kill enough enemies, they will give you temporary bonuses. And I kinda like the idea behind this. My main issue is that it doesn't really give lasting value, since the buffs are temporary and you don't really need them because this game is pretty damn easy. I mean, when you first start the game without unlocking anything, you already have an ability that pretty much gives you invincibility every 3 seconds, which I really don't understand why they put this in the game, other than to kind of balance out how janky the hitboxes can be. Another huge gripe with this game is that all the maps feel pretty much the same. There's no obstacles, and I'm pretty sure the only collision in this game is the map boundaries, which are pretty small too. In my roughly 80 minutes of gameplay, I never found a secret pickup on any maps either, or any map-specific structures. So for gameplay, I'm gonna have to give this game like a 4 out of 10 at most. It just doesn't have as much to do, so you end up running around a bunch for no reason. Speaking of which, let's move over to content, since the game really doesn't have much of that either. The game right now advertises that it has 10 starting weapons, 41 spells, and 30 auras, but the 10 starting weapons are just different spells from the 41, and even then, saying the game has 41 spells is generous, because I've run into more than a couple of reskins. Plus, the auras are usually just generic stat boosts. Not having many weapons at this point in the game's development is fine, but if you're already using reskins to bolster the number of spells, that's not a good sign. I'm going to have to give this game a 3 out of 10 for content. Now, I want to talk about something that in my opinion can make or break a good roguelite: meta progression. If your meta progression is bad, I have no reason to play your game. So I want to break this section up into 2 parts. The first being mechanical meta progression, and the second being knowledge-based meta progression. The mechanical meta progression is pretty simple. During gameplay, you collect this currency called astral flowers, and you can spend those on permanent stat boost. The issue is how stupidly strong the system is. After only 2 runs, I got so many free permanent stat boosts, and they are really strong. So it feels like the game is just not balanced out that well. After my first 2 runs, the game felt even more like a cakewalk than it already was. The next part really bugs me though: knowledge-based meta progression. If you don't know what I mean by this, it's essentially any knowledge a player can gain to make the game easier. Like for example, knowing what item combinations make items evolve in Vampire Survivors. Once you learn what makes an evolution, you can use that to make the game easier. So surely it should work the same in Spellbook Demonslayers, right? Not exactly. They somehow managed to mess even this up. This game is so linear that even evolutions are bogged down to just require getting an item to a high enough level. That's it. And it's not even high levels either. If you can get an item to level 5, depending on the item, it'll evolve. And you can get an evolution from leveling up, so if you're lucky, you can just get an evolution a minute into the run. My favorite part of Vampire Survivors is discovering all the secrets and all the item combinations. The first time I realized you can have an evolution with more than 2 items, I damn near lost my mind. But in this game, it's just bland. Most of the evolutions don't even feel that different from the base items either, so I really am going to have to give this game a 1 out of 10 for meta progression. These last two sections I'm going to be pretty brief on. For polish and bugs, I'll give this game a 4 out of 10. You know, it's early access, it's expected to have some bugs here and there. The only reason it's a 4 and not higher is because I did encounter a game-breaking bug where I literally could not play the game and the menu was covering my screen even though I was supposed to be mid-run. As for polish, the hitboxes are pretty janky. Sometimes I feel like I should get hit and I don't, and sometimes I feel like I'm nowhere near the enemy and I get damaged. And like I said, a lot of the sprites are just recolored and reused, but I expect a lot of this to get better, hopefully. And lastly, I will end on a high note and say I like the art style. It's kind of a mix between Realm of the Mad God and Vampire Slayers. It's kind of a mix between Realm of the Mad God and Vampire Survivor, so you can't really go wrong. And the soundtrack really carries this game. Like, I wish I could buy the OST because oh my god, it sounds like Pliny and Steve Vai collaborated just to create the absolute best riffs to grace our ears in this game. Like, listen to this. So honestly, for the soundtrack alone, I'll give this game a 9 out of 10 on this category. So here's my closing thoughts. With an overall score of 21 out of 50, the game really isn't all that right now. I think the game has potential if they change some of the major gripes I have, and honestly, for less than $3, it's worth a shot. I mean, you could always refund the game if you don't like it. But it's not a game I'm going to be revisiting for a while, since it feels more like a chore to get through runs than an actual enjoyable experience. If you want to see my first 75 minutes with the game, you can check out that on my channel here, or watch this other video the algorithm thinks you'll enjoy. Anyway, thanks for watching, and leave a like to support a small creator, and I'll see you guys later.